I never much liked going into town. Folks there had a way of looking at you like they were weighing something. Your worth, your secrets, your usefulness. Since my wife passed, and my boy followed her into the ground 2 winters later, I didn't make the trip more than once a month. Just enough to get what couldn't be grown or fixed at the ranch. The rest I did without. That morning, the sun hung low, hazy behind a veil of dust. My mare, Maisie, trotted steady down the rutted path, her ears twitching at the crows circling overhead. I just come off a dry spell, grass brittle, water low, but the work kept me sane. The quiet out there wasn't empty. It was honest, unlike the silence you found behind people's eyes in town. I hitched Maisie outside the feed store and started down toward the mercantile, boots echoing hollow on the boards. That's when I heard it, a girl's voice sharp and scared, and a man's louder one, mean as a rusted hinge. I turned the corner toward the back of the saloon, where trash barrels sat behind the kitchen doors, and there she was. She couldn't have been more than 12. Face smudged, hair matted, a dress that used to be blue now the color of old dishwater. She was thin in that brittle way you see in stray dogs, like one wrong word might snap her in two. Merle Drayton had her by the wrist, yanking her forward like he meant to swing her straight through the wall. She was digging my trash, he barked, spitting the words like tobacco. Filthy little rat thinks she can steal from my kitchen. I wasn't stealing, the girl said, voice shaking but steady. It was just crust, just bread someone threw out. You don't get to decide what's yours, beggar, Merle snarled. You want food, you earn it. He raised his free hand like he meant to slap her. That's when I stepped in. Let go of her, Merle, I said calm but clear. He turned, squinting at me like I'd interrupted a game. This ain't your business, Harlan. It is now. Merle held my stare a second longer than wise men do, then let go. The girl stumbled back, catching herself against the wall, clutching her wrist. She's a thief, he muttered. She's a child, I said. And if you're so short on bread you're guarding your garbage, you've got bigger problems. Sheriff Boyd Latham showed up then, hat low over his eyes, thumb hooked in his belt like always. What's the ruckus? Merle motioned toward the girl. She was scavenging. The sheriff looked her over. Didn't ask her name, didn't ask her story. Just scratch his chin. Ain't our job to raise other folks' strays. The girl didn't speak, just stood still, eyes darting between us like she was waiting to be kicked. I reached into my coat and pulled out a few coins, dropped them into Merle's palm. For the bread she didn't take. He sneered but pocketed the money. You want her? You keep her. Sheriff didn't argue, just nodded once, like he was washing his hands of it all. I turned to the girl. What's your name? She hesitated, then said, Tessie May. All right, Tessie May, I said, keeping my voice low. Come with me. She didn't move at first. Looked like she didn't trust her legs. Or me. But finally, she nodded just once and I offered my hand. Hers was light as paper and cold despite the heat. When her fingers touched mine, they trembled. You're safe now, I whispered. She blinked like the words didn't register, like she hadn't heard them before. I lifted her up onto Maisie behind the saddle. She didn't speak, didn't ask where we were going, just clung to the back of my coat, small and silent, like she was trying not to exist. As we rode out past the edge of town, folks watched, some with confusion, others with something colder. Pity maybe, or judgment, or the dull suspicion folks get when someone does a thing that makes them feel smaller by comparison. But I didn't look back, just rode on, steady through the dust. The girl didn't ask where home was. Maybe she knew it didn't matter, because for the first time in a long while, neither of us was leaving alone. Tessie didn't speak much on the ride home, just held on like she was afraid if she loosened her grip, she'd vanish into the wind. I felt the heat of her cheek pressed against my back, the way her breath came quick, shallow, like a deer that had been chased too far for too long. Back at the ranch, I slid off Maisie and turned to help her down. She hesitated, eyes sweeping over the place, weathered porch, dry grass, fence slats leaning like old men. Nothing pretty about it, just bones and wood and dust. But it stood, and it was mine. It ain't much, I told her, but it don't bite. She nodded and climbed down slow, like her legs weren't quite sure of the ground. Inside, the house smelled of old pine and horses. I kept it clean, but there was a stillness in the air that no broom could touch. The kind of stillness that settles when laughter leaves a place for good. She stood just inside the door, arms folded tight across her belly. "You hungry?" I asked. She nodded. I warmed up leftover beans and cornbread, watching her out the corner of my eye. She ate like someone might yank the plate away any second, quick, small bites, eyes down, chewing fast. I didn't ask questions. Not yet. After, I showed her the back room. Used to be my boy's. Still had the quilt his mama made. Little blue stars stitched into every square. She traced a finger over one corner, but didn't say a word. "You can sleep here," I said. "Door stays open. You need anything, I'm in the front room." She nodded again. Always the nod, never words. That night, I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, listening for her. The old house creaked like it always had. Wind slipped through the window slats. And just before sleep came, I heard her breathing, a soft hitching sound, then a stifled sob. I didn't go in, but I stayed awake. Next morning, she was already out back, sitting beside the chicken coop. The hens clucked nervously and used the company, but she didn't move to touch them. Just watched, arms around her knees. "You know their names?" I asked, coming up behind her. She shook her head. "Well, I don't either. Used to be my wife did the naming. Called one of them Margaret after her sister. That bird pecked at everything, just like her." Tessie gave a small, sudden laugh. A flicker, gone before it finished. But it was the first sound she'd made besides chewing and breathing. I sat down beside her on the dirt. "You ever feed a chicken?" She shook her head again. I handed her a tin of cracked corn. She pinched a few kernels, held out her palm, and waited. The birds came slow, then bold. One hopped in her lap, and she stiffened, but didn't pull away. She looked up at me like it was magic. That afternoon, I found her in the barn brushing Maisie with slow, careful strokes. The mare didn't flinch, just stood there calm, tail flicking. Tessie talked to her in whispers. I didn't catch the words, but it was the tone that stayed with me. Gentle, like maybe she remembered how to be soft with something that wouldn't hurt her. Days passed like that. Quiet work, shared meals, long silences. I didn't push her for a story. Figured she'd speak when the words were ready. I'd seen what happened when folks tried to dig too deep too fast. You scare off more than you find. One evening, as the sun dragged long shadows across the fields, I found her in the sitting room, staring at the mantel. On it sat a framed daguerreotype. My wife, Loretta, holding our boy, Levi. She had kind eyes, Loretta did. The kind that could tame storms. "That your family?" Tessie asked, voice barely above a breath. I nodded. "Was. Wife took sick 5 years ago. Boy followed not long after." She studied the photo a moment longer. "They look kind." They were. She looked down at her hands, picking at the skin along her knuckles. "My mama used to sing to me at night. Had this song about stars and rivers. I forget most of it now." "She gone?" I asked, gentle. Tessie nodded. "Wagon caught fire near Abilene. Don't know if it was raiders or lightning. I ran, hid under a bluff. When I came back, everything was smoke." Her voice cracked, but she swallowed it down hard. "How long you been on your own?" "Months," she said. "Walked mostly. Took scraps. Slept behind barns. Some folks were nice. Most weren't." I didn't ask more. Just sat beside her, the weight of her words settling in the room like dust. Later that night, I found her curled in the rocking chair. Same one Levi used to nap in after chores. Her arms were wrapped around a wool blanket, eyes shut, mouth slack with sleep. I stood there a long time, watching her breathe. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel so hollow. The air wasn't so still. I turned out the lamp and left her there, rocking gently, the last light of dusk warming her face. The trouble found us just as spring began to green the hills. I was out in the south pasture, hammering in a post where the fence had split clean through. Winter had taken its toll on the place. Boards warped, nails pulled loose by frost, but I'd seen worse. The work kept my hands busy, my mind steady. Tessie came running over the rise, hair loose, feet bare in the grass. I dropped the hammer before she reached me. "There's a man at the gate," she said, voice thin with fear. "Said he's looking for someone. Said he knows me." I didn't ask how. Didn't need to. I saw it in her face. The way her eyes darted like a cornered rabbit's, the way her hands trembled against her dress. Some past had caught up. I told her to stay behind the shed and made my way up the hill. He was there all right, leaning against the gate like he owned the place, spitting tobacco juice into my grass. Big man, wide in the shoulders, sun-leathered skin, and a crooked nose that had been broken once, maybe twice. "Morning," he said, not bothering to tip his hat. "This here the Crow Ranch?" I kept a careful distance. "That's right. You got a girl here?" "About ya high." He held out a thick hand. Skinny, dirty blonde hair. "Name's Tess." I didn't answer, just waited. He squinted at me, smirked. "She's mine." "She ain't," I said. He laughed, not kindly. "Well, she was. Ran off with some of my money, too. Figured she'd come sniffing round some fool soft enough to feed her." I stepped closer, slow. "She said you knew her?" "I raised her," he said. "More or less. After her folks died, I took her in. Fed her. Kept her safe. Ain't my fault if she didn't like the way I did things." "Tell me," I said, "did feeding her come with fists?" His face twisted. "You got no call to talk to me like that." "I do," I said. "She's under my roof now, which makes it my concern." "She's a runaway," he snapped. "A liar. She'll turn on you just like she turned on me. I got a right to take her back." I let that hang in the air, then said, "You don't have rights here. Not anymore." He stepped forward like he meant to test me. I didn't move. I've known fear. Lost a wife to fever. Held my boy as he coughed blood into my chest. There's little a man can do to scare you once you've watched your whole world fall apart slow. "She don't belong to anyone," I said. "And she's not leaving. You really gonna fight me over some scrawny little beggar?" I stared hard at him. "You lay a hand on her again, and I'll bury you where you stand." He flinched at that. Not much. Just a twitch at the corner of his jaw. Then he spat again and turned back toward his horse. "This ain't over," he said. "You can't keep her hidden forever." "I won't have to," I said. "She ain't hiding." He didn't answer, just mounted up and rode off, kicking up dust all the way down the ridge. Tessie was waiting by the shed, knees drawn to her chest. She looked at me, eyes wide, brimming with questions she didn't know how to ask. "He's gone," I said. "For now." Her shoulders dropped, like someone had lifted a weight off her ribs. "He'll come back." "Maybe," I said, "but not today." She stared at the ground. He wasn't my kin, just a man who took what he wanted. Used to call it charity. I nodded. "You don't owe me the rest. Not unless you want to tell it." She looked up. "Why'd you stand up for me?" I thought about that. Thought about how quiet the ranch had been for too long, how the sound of her laughter, rare as it was, had begun to fill the hollow places in the walls. Thought about how she moved through my house like a soul returning to its body. "You reminded me," I said finally, "of someone I loved, someone who never got a second chance." She didn't speak, just reached out and took my hand, holding it tight like it was the last rope between her and the dark. That night, after supper, we sat on the porch. The moon came up slow, casting silver over the dry fields. She leaned her head against my arm, small and quiet and steady. "I don't want to run anymore," she whispered. "You won't have to," I said. Inside, the fire crackled low. Outside, the crickets sang. And for the first time in a long while, I believed my words might be true. He came back just after the wheat started to yellow. Early enough that summer hadn't hardened the ground. Late enough for hope to settle too deep in her bones. I saw his shadow long before I saw his face. Distant figure riding up the ridge, slow and certain, like he knew no one would stop him. But I was already in the yard, shotgun resting in the crook of my arm, the girl behind me near the porch steps, one hand gripping the rail, so tight her knuckles went white. He dismounted without a word. Same crooked nose, same eyes like dried tar. "I warned you," he said. "Didn't think I meant it?" I didn't answer, just watched the dust slide off his boots. "You think you're a savior? That how this plays in your head? You don't even know the things she's done." "She's not yours," I said. "And what she's done or hasn't done don't change what she is now." He smirked, reached into his coat. My finger tensed on the trigger, but he only pulled out a folded paper, held it up like a trophy. "Got myself a writ," he said. "Claimed custody. Sheriff in Bramble Ridge stamped it. Name's inked right there." I didn't move. Didn't need to. Tessie stepped forward. "That's a lie." Her voice shook, but she stood her ground. "She's not a minor anymore," I said. Turned 17 last frost. That paper's garbage. He sneered. Still owed, one way or another. She ain't property. She is to me. The wind caught his coat, flared it wide. I could see now, belt coiled with rope, holster slung low. He'd come ready to take her by force, if need be. And I knew then I couldn't let that happen. Not again. Not on this ground. I've buried folks here before, I said, voice flat. Won't lose sleep burying another. For a long beat, we stood in silence. Even the birds seemed to hush. Then she walked past me, straight up to him. I nearly called her back, but something in her eyes held me still. She stopped 3 feet from him. Her hands were shaking, but her jaw was set. You hurt me, she said. You starved me. Sold my labor for drink. I used to think I deserved it. Thought maybe the world just worked that way. But I don't believe that anymore. He laughed. And what? You think you're someone now? I know I am. Girl, you're... She stepped closer. I'm not afraid of you. He reached for her arm. Slow, but still too fast. That's when Maisie bolted from the barn, braying loud, startling him just enough to break the moment. His hand snapped back. Dust kicked up. I had the shotgun pointed before his next breath. You touch her again, I said, and this land's gonna remember your name for all the wrong reasons. He stared at me, then at her, then spat in the dirt and turned. Didn't say another word as he rode off. Didn't look back. Dust swallowed him same as before. When it was over, Tessie sank to the porch, her whole frame trembling. I sat beside her, not touching, just close. You did that, I said. Not me. She shook her head. I couldn't have, not alone. You're not alone. That night, I found her in the field just before dusk, gathering wildflowers with a quiet kind of reverence. Like each stem was proof of something. I want to stay, she said when she saw me. You already have. She came over and stood beside me. And for the first time, she smiled with her whole face. Not just lips, but eyes and soul. You saved me, she whispered. No, I said soft. You save yourself. I just left the door open. Later, when we returned to the house, I noticed she'd pinned the wildflowers in a little glass jar on the mantel, right next to the photo of Loretta and Levi. And for the first time since I lost them, the house felt like it might be breathing again. Like something had started over quiet and new. Like kindness had roots here.